darkness, my old friend. Okay, I put the spoiler warning at the beginning of the video, but I'll throw it out there again. Like, if you haven't read the two most recent chapters of My Hero Academia, more specifically, the most recent chapter of My Hero Academia, you should really just leave and maybe come back later because, okay. Alright, so, that was intense, wasn't it? that was something insane. That was one of the most, like, intense backstories for a villain I have really read. Okay, and I'm sure there's gonna be other examples you could give, like, well, this one's way more intense, like, I'm sure. But that was one of the ones that's going to stick with me for a while, alright? So, a few months ago, I made a video about Tomura, and at this point, we didn't know his whole backstory. We saw a scene with him when he was a little kid, when he first met All For One, and the doctor showed up and gave the hands of all of his family members to Tomura, and we could kind of infer what happened. It wasn't, like, expressly shown back then, but we could infer that it's like Tenko or Tomura awakened his quirk, killed his family, and then the only thing that's remaining are the hands of his parents and his grandparents and his sister, and the doctor fashioned them into ways, so that's why Tomura wears hands all over his body. I'll play a clip from that video because the way I described it wasn't, like, exactly how it went down, but it was pretty close. So, I want you to imagine... This is really messed up. It seriously is. But I want you, because this is probably what actually happened, alright? And this scenario, why? Like, it makes perfect sense how he would end up like this, okay? His quirk manifests, because for little kids, they don't always manifest at the exact same time for every little kid. Sometimes they manifest when they're toddlers, when they're babies even, maybe. Sometimes it takes a little bit while longer for them to manifest when they're, like, kindergarten age, okay? Like, one day you wake up and you're just having a normal day as a little kid. Here, honey, have some breakfast. Great, I'm gonna go play with the dog. And you touch it, and it dies right in your arms. Not just dies, it just rots away. Like, you could slowly seeing the flesh ripping from its fur and just... And then you cry in agony. Your mom comes out to see what's wrong, and it's like, Mom, and then she picks you up because you're crying, and while you're holding on to her, she starts screaming bloody murder and drops to the ground. And then your dad comes in, and you're like, Dad! And, like, because you're a little kid, you're like 5 years old, you have no idea what the hell is happening. Yeah. Okay, so... a few things to unpack here. Actually, like, a whole, like, moving truck of things to unpack here, but just for the sake of keeping this video under 3 hours, my god, I love Horikoshi. I know I've gushed over him, like, before, like, so many times, but, look, it's the same kind of deal with Endeavor, alright, where he creates these characters that, like, are real when it comes to, like, our world and things like that. Like, so let's talk about Kotaro. Let's talk about Nana's son, Tomura's father, who is a big reason why Tomura ended up the way he did, that led to the inevitable demise of his family, okay? So Kotaro was an abusive father to his son, Tenko. He, being the son of Nana, had a disdain for heroes because Nana abandoned him, even though she wrote a letter and she explained the reason. But despite that, he still has a huge disdain for heroes, to the point where he, extended that to his children, to the point where it's like, if I hear you kids talking about wanting to be heroes or doing hero crap in my house, you're gonna get the back of my hand. He was an abusive father, emotionally and very physically, to Tomura and his sister as well. Mostly Tomura. Tenko ended up getting a lot of the brunt of it, right? So here's the thing, though. It would have been very easy to just... It's the same thing with Endeavor. It would have been very easy to just depict Kotaro as this 100% unrepentant asshole, doesn't care about anything. It's just like, I'm a monster, I'm gonna beat my kid. There is clearly something shown there when he's looking at Nana's picture, and his wife comes in and is like, that's it, I'm done, I'm leaving, you keep, I'm taking the kids, I'm done with this. And he has a moment where he's looking at the picture and he's like, Yeah, I've gone too far. Now, I want to remind anybody, for everyone that's watched that didn't see the Todoroki video, if you haven't, I would recommend go watching that. Simply feeling, simply being repentant a little bit for your actions doesn't erase everything that you did. Kotaro is a bad person, all right? You beat your kids, you're a bad person. I'm sorry, that's just how it goes, right? But he's at least depicted like a person. All right, he's not depicted like this like evil monster that has no sympathy for his actions, okay? In fact, probably the scene that was the strongest for me in his character was when Kotaro was looking at the picture of Nana and he was remembering her, and the last time he saw her when she left, and he has this line where he just says to himself, you know, it's like, it would have been easier if you just hated me. You know, it would have been easier if you just pushed me away. Instead, she left that note for him that had like, you know, just keep smiling the rest of your life, Kotaro. I believe in you. I'll always love you. But I need to go do this now. I need to go be a hero, okay? And this is something that Kotaro has struggled with probably his entire life. His feelings for his mom, his feelings for hero society in general, it just came out in a really negative way toward his kids. Now, I'm also not even going to go the next 1,000 miles and just say, oh, well, because he seemed like he was repentant in that one scene, it seemed like he was regretting his decisions. You know, he's like, okay, yeah, you're right, I've gone too far this time. You know, I'm not going to say like, oh, well, that's the moment right there he would have turned over a new leaf, okay? Because this kind of behavior continued for years with his kids, all right? So I don't think this was the first moment he felt any guilt for this. You know, it might have had moments where he felt guilt, and then the next day he was right back to doing the same crap. All right? I'm just saying that Horikoshi was depicting him in a little bit more of a realistic fashion. It's kind of the same way with Endeavor in a lot of ways. You know, like Endeavor, also abusive to his wife in this case and his children. And right now, though, it seems like, okay, he's trying to at least better himself, you know, baby steps. I'm like, okay, that doesn't erase everything you did. Still not a good person, but at least you're attempting to be a better person. All right, I would rather have someone that did horrible things that's trying to better themselves even only a little bit than someone that just continues to do those horrible things without any regret, okay? So, yeah, I mean, like I said, go watch Todoroki's video on all that stuff when I talk about Endeavor, but I like the way Horikoshi painted Kotaro. So now talking about Tenko, or Tomura, you know, he could have done this where he just, like, cracked against his dad one day. Like, his dad went to go hit him, and Tenko awakened his quirk and, like, grabbed his dad's hand and then, like, immediately just disintegrated his dad right then and there. And you could have explained that as, like, that's the reason why Tenko became the way he is now. He became this villain, Tomura Shigaraki, right? You could have said that, and you know what? I would have bought that. All right? You know, like, killing your own father by your hand. I mean, that's pretty intense, right? But no. Instead, we go, like, the next level with it. You know, we go to crazy new verandas with this, all right? Where we not only have the death of Kotaro, we also have the death of his wife and her parents, Kotaro's in-laws, who were all supportive of Tenko. They didn't really do much to try to stop the abuse, as in the case with a lot of, you know, abusive households. You know, it's like, even if you have other people there that are not abusive, they might not stop the person that's the abuser. So that's, I mean, that's real. You know, it's one of those moments where you're looking at this and you're like, why don't you stop him from beating this child? But it's something where it's like, when you're caught in that sort of, that family dynamic, that's not a great way to put it, but that's the best way I have right now. When you're caught in that sort of mire, you know, of an abusive household, you from an outsider, you can look in and just say, oh, why didn't you just do this? Why didn't you just do that? When it comes to somebody that's very emotionally abusive, they can kind of have like a power over you in a certain respect, right? And this person, Kotaro, for instance, he was this wealthy businessman, and he probably had a lot of power and a lot of influence in the town. Maybe Kotaro knew some police, so even if his wife or her parents called up the police to try to report this, maybe Kotaro could use his influence. You know, it's just kind of these little things here you don't really think about, but it certainly does happen in our world, so that's another really powerful moment there. But certainly, you know, Kotaro was the one that was abusive. The other ones were, you know, not really doing anything to directly stop it, but they still cared for him and gave him as much support as they could. So they were not bad people. And of course, you know, Tenko's sister, Hana, she didn't really do much, anything wrong. And then the dog, of course, was completely innocent in all of this. And so it started out pretty much as I described it in that last video, where he's just outside playing with the dog and just hugging him, and then he has this mental break where it's like, that's it. It's over. You know, I'm tired of this. I'm done with this. It was one too many times for him, and he just snaps. And that's right there where he awakens his quirks, you know, full power, like when he was at a young age, and he's letting his emotions just go out of control here, to the point where it's not even just the things he's touching directly that are decaying. Like, he touches the ground and it, like, spreads like a virus, like his hatred. All right, and so the dog, his sister, his mom comes out, and his mom crumbles away, her parents, and then finally Kotaro is the finale of this, where the whole house just gets taken down, and Kotaro kind of looks at his son, and his son has this, like, expression of just ecstasy on his face as Tenko just eliminates his father right in front of him, just disintegrates him into powder, all right? And that last scene there, when Tenko, or now I guess Tomura would be more appropriate, like, this is where that transition occurred, he's just like, the itching finally stopped, that moment when I finally ended my father's existence. Now listen, you know, a lot of times when you're crafting a good villain, you know, and you're giving that villain's backstory is extremely important. I mean, it's one thing to just have some one-off villains, you know, you don't need to explain in great detail how they ended up the way they ended up, you know, it's just like, there are some random thugs, you know, Izuku and Todoroki or Bakugo beat the crap out of them and they throw them in jail, whatever, that's fine, they're just random thugs or whatever. Not every single villain needs to have a crazy backstory, but when you're crafting the main villain, the main antagonist of your story. And that's who Tomura is. I mean, All for One is a threat. He's a big player, but I think Tomura and Izuku, that's the thing that we're really going up against here, okay? When you're crafting a villain like that, making the backstory something believable, like, oh, okay, that's the reason that person ended up the way they ended up. That is absolutely crucial. Okay, and also to make it believable, not to go over the top with it. And I think Tomura's backstory hit all of those notes. I mean, dead dog, dead parents, at your own hand, childhood trauma bonus. Is it any surprise to anybody after reading that backstory how he ended up the way he ended up? And of course, you know, like, you have to throw in All for One here as a bad influence, of course. All for One wanted him to turn into this messed up, like, villain because he hated his grandmother, Nana, of course, for the damage that, you know, he suffered from her hand, and of course the quirk One for All that got passed down to All Might, and then All Might caused more damage to him. So you know All for One was like, oh yes, I'm going to take Nana's grandchild and I'm going to nurture him into this ultimate supervillain to just spit on Nana's grave. Right? Like, you know he was influencing him, but All for One, at least from what we see so far, was not even part of the story when, you know, he did what he did with his family. Now, he might have been observing him. He might have been observing Tenko's family, because, you know, Nana's relations and everything. Like, I'm going to see where this goes. And then after witnessing it, you know, he decided, okay, come with me now. I will show you how to use your power, right? And he probably twisted it, used some psychological manipulation, you know, repressed memories, that sort of deal, which is now coming to a head in the current arc, which I love this arc. I love that you're giving an entire arc. Like, you understand, like, this is not something you normally see in shonen. All right, taking an entire arc away from the main cast of characters. The fact that Horikoshi can do this, and Tomura is such a interesting character, he can kind of carry this arc all to himself. And it's not even like a short arc. It might be short compared to like the Chisake arc and everything, but it's not like a 2 to 3 chapter little mini arc, and then we cut back to over Izuku and, you know, the Class 1A and see what they're doing. No, this has been going on for a few months now, this arc. I don't know exactly how many chapters it has been so far, but it's been a decent number of chapters for an arc. Longer than the Gentle arc. I'm most certain that that's the case. I'll check to make sure. I'll throw up some numbers here, but still, it's a really good arc, right? So yeah, this is a great thing to do, because eventually we're going to have, I'm going to move you aside here, Todoroki, eventually we're going to have that battle between Izuku and Tomura, or that confrontation between both of them, like, directly, right? We've had a few of them before, like when they were in the mall and everything, but we're going to have a moment where they, you know, exchange, like, maybe a little bit, like, he finds out what happened with Tomura's past and everything like that, and we're going to see how this really goes. Oh, going back into talking about All for One's manipulation here, okay, that's something I wanted to bring up, like, I'm glad that Horikoshi didn't go that route with it. I'm glad that it wasn't like, it wasn't some kind of thing where Tenko is being abused, and then one night he's, like, outside of his house, you know, being punished, and then All for One appears. You know, like Wilson in Home Improvement, like, looks over his fence or something and is like, just give in to the dark side, young Tenko. You know, give in to your hatred. You know, like Wilson if he was crossed with Emperor Palpatine. Like, I'm glad that it wasn't like he was manipulating Tenko, even at that young age, to do what he did to his family. This was something that just happened on its own, right? And then, you know, even to bring back another scene that happens a little bit earlier on in the story, there's that scene when Bakugo, when he was captured by the League of Villains, and Bakugo gets freed for that second, and he blasts Tomura's face, and one of his hands get lopped off, you know, and Tomura's, like, kind of freaking out a little bit. He sees the hand on the ground, and he's like, oh, father, 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 and he puts the hand back on. You know, Tomura is an extremely mentally unstable character, okay, which makes him a lot harder to write. But, yeah, now that we see him remembering all of these things about his past and all that stuff, I'm wondering what way Horikoshi's going to take it. Like, for instance, now that he remembers everything he did to his parents and to his, you know, grandparents and his dog and his sister and everything, will Tomura still, you know, wear the hands of his father? I know that's a really messed up sentence to say, but that's his character. He wears their freaking disembodied hands, you know? You know, will he still wear them? Or will he, like, have a change of mindset here? Because the way that he always explained it, like, oh yes, I have the hands all over my body, and that way I can kind of mitigate that nausea I'm always feeling. Whenever I have the hands off me, I always have this deep sense of nausea. That's probably because of those repressed memories that he had, which are currently no longer repressed. He remembers everything, okay? And it seems like, from, not the most recent chapter, but the original, the first chapter, you know, Tomura Shigaraki, The Origin, there was that moment where when he was fighting Destro, or Redestro, and everything's kind of getting faded out, and he's like, oh yes, you know, this is why I want to destroy everything. This is why I hate everything. And it seems like he was, like, having this epiphany moment where he was coming to terms with who the person that he is. It wasn't like, oh, this was my backstory that I just remembered. Oh my god, this is so horrible. I'm gonna have a change of heart. No, it seemed like he was embracing it, did it not? It seemed like he was accepting it, like, that's right. I'm remembering now. Father and mother and sister and the little dog, you know, this is who I am. This has always been who I am. You know, like, that seems like the kind of thing that he's going to now. And he's going to awaken this true power, this enhanced version of his quirk, and he's going to come back into terms, and I'm sure Giganto Machina is going to lay the beat down. Like, I can imagine Tomura, he's just kind of, like, fading out a little bit, like, right before Giganto Machina arrives and beats the crap out of Redestro. You know, Tomura just has this moment where he kind of blacks out for a moment. This is when the flashback is happening, like, right now, where he's just, like, everything around him just goes quiet, and he remembers, and then it's like he's in a daze. And then, like, a few minutes later, he comes out of it after he remembers everything, and he's like, and he comes back, and then, like, Redestro's on the ground, just a bloody puddle, and Gigantomachina's like, BAM! BAM! Oh, you're awake, master! BAM! I accept you now. BAM! And he's just like, oh, okay. And then I could actually see a really cool moment where Gigantomachina accepts him as his master. Like, it's kind of like in, sort of like in Bleach. I know that's a really weird comparison to make, but it's kind of like that scene in Bleach where it's like when Ichigo learned about his past, you know, Zangetsu and his Zanpakuto and his inner hollow kind of also kind of, oh, okay, now you have your knowledge of your past and where you come from and everything, so now we will help you. Maybe it's something here with Tomura where he's just like, after he comes to terms of who he really is and where he came from and everything, and he remembers everything, Gigantomachina will just notice that change in him and notice that, like, oh, this is truly the master all for one's, like, successor. I will now bow to you. And I could see a moment where, he's just pounding Redestro into the ground, and Tomura is just like, stop, Gigantomachina. And he's like, oh, yes, sir. And he, like, bows to him, and it's like this moment where Tomura stands over all. And it's a moment where it's like the League of Villains is entering a new era. They've beaten down the members of this liberation army, and they're coming out of it way stronger. And I could even see them, because they were, like, in that state of poverty, like living in these ramshackled old hovels on the outskirts of town. I could see, like, maybe taking command of the Liberation Army in a sense, or at least taking advantage of their assets, like robbing them and everything, and using that money to kind of build up their organization. And the next time we see Tomura, they'll be like, they've built themselves back up from ruin. After the defeat of All for One, they've kind of been just living in poverty, but now they're kind of entering this new, like, okay, we're back on top sort of deal. I could see that. Not to talk about, like, not thinking that Tomura's gonna be like, he's gonna be wearing a suit and tie, swishing the wine up there, like, yes, we are now superior to all. Nothing like that, but, at least get better clothing, get a new base of operations and everything like that. Fix up Toga, make sure she doesn't die, get a new robotic hand for Mr. Compress, that kind of stuff. And we're gonna move on here to the next story arc, which is gonna probably go back to featuring the main cast, but now we know everything Tomura went through and all that stuff. Yeah, this was a great backstory. Very emotional. It's something that really makes me sympathize with Tomura at the same time, while also still viewing him as the light of the villain, because he still embraces it. Like, no, I still want to destroy everything. I still hate, like, everybody. It's just, I've come to terms with that's who I am, right? So yeah, if nothing else, very well written backstory. I'll close out by saying that. All right, well, thanks for watching, everybody, and I'm looking forward to see where this is going to go from here. This will be Tekking101 signing out. I was gonna do a joke, kind of like, like talking to the hand sort of thing. Like, I was gonna put little googly eyes on my hand, like, hey there, everybody, ready to talk about Tomura's backstory? But I couldn't start the video off with that. Like, that's, wow, okay, well, later, everybody.